In this video, we're going to work on building a view for updating the account. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to do here. We need to update the email, update the username, and update the field for hiding the email. We also need to be able to update the profile image, but the profile image isn't that simple because we need to be able to crop it. Let's take a look actually, and I'll kind of outline what we need to do. So here's my account screen. Now I'm logged in with my own user. Notice I can update or change password. So if I click on update, this should take me to an edit screen. Notice the URL change here. It's appended the word edit. And now I can change some parameters. I can change the email, I can change the username, and I can toggle this hide email setting. Then if I click save, those settings will be applied. The profile image is a little trickier though, because if we click on this, I can, let's just select, I'll just select one at random, doesn't really matter. But then I need to be able to crop it. So this functionality is a little bit trickier, and we're gonna save this till the next video. So for this video, we're just gonna work on updating the email, the username, and this hide email field. So as always, when we start with building a new view, we're gonna start with the HTML, and we are going to copy paste like we've been doing. So I'm gonna create this new file called edit_account.html. So let's go into account, go into templates, and then account, new file, and press Ctrl S and paste in edit_account.html. Now let's get that HTML. So let's go back to GitHub and let's copy all of this content. So this is pretty much the same as account.html, but it's just gonna be slightly different. Like the input fields have changed. So if we take a look at openchat.xyz, this is basically the same. The only thing that's changed is like how this is kind of highlighted and there's an edit button up here. This is now an input field instead of just like some text that's displayed. This is an input field, and then this can be toggled. That's really the only, or mostly the only difference, other than the friends stuff. Obviously that is also removed. Okay, so what do we got here? Let's go to the top. Of course, some starting CSS, we come down, and the structure is mostly the same. You have a card body, we have the image, then we have some extra stuff actually up here that's hidden currently in the view. This is for canceling or confirming after you crop. So remember in openchat.xyz, if I selected an image, let me just click one, these two icons show up at the top for either declining or accepting the crop. So those are the two icons that you see up here, those two. Now here's the image container. So this container is different than the account screen because there's some different kind of formatting. If we go back to openchat.xyz, we see that it kind of fades when I hover the mouse over it, and also there's an edit button that's kind of right in the middle. So that fading styling is being applied to, I believe, let me see here, this profile image class. So if you go up here and you search for profile image, no, that's not there. It must be image container. No, it's not there either. Actually, it's probably, the styling is actually not here yet. I probably don't apply the styling until the next video when we actually do edit it. So if I hover over it after this video, it's probably not going to change. Next, we have the edit text. So this is kind of that button that you see, that edit button. And then coming down, we have the form for the different inputs. So the inputs are the email, there's the email, and then here's the username. And then down below that, we have the checkbox for hiding the email. So inside of this form are all those inputs. Then of course we have form errors. So if something goes wrong, we want to output those form errors. We have the submit button, so the save button, and that is pretty much it. This JavaScript function read URL, this is going to be used in the next video when we choose an image. So what happens if we go to openchat.xyz, if we choose an image, what actually happens is when I select this and I click on it, that read URL function is being called, and it's setting it to the background of this kind of image view. Then after that, it gets cropped. So this read URL function is responsible for just setting that image kind of before it gets cropped, which we're going to work on in the next video, like I said. All right, so now let's work on the form for submitting those updates. So let's go into forms.py. We have our registration form. We have our account authentication form. Now we're going to build an account update form. So class, we're going to call it account update form. It'll be a basic form. So forms.model form. We're not extending any like special class meta to tell it what kind of model we're using. We're using the account model, and then the fields that we want to use in the form, or the fields that we're looking for in the form, the things that can be changed. We have username, we have email, we have the profile image. So profile image, and then the last one is that hide email field. So hide_email. Those are the 4 fields that can be changed in this screen. Now I'm going to build some clean functions because I want to apply some logic when we validate this form. And this is going to be a little bit tricky. So the first one is pretty simple. I guess the last one's actually going to be a little tricky. The first one's pretty simple. Clean email. You've seen this before. This is what we want to do in the event, how we want to check the email to make sure that it's valid, basically. So cleaned data, we're going to look for the email field like we've done before, cast this to lowercase. Now I want to do a try except block. I can delete the else and the finally. So inside of try, I can do account equals account.objects and then .get and look for that email. So look for that specific email. Now the exception that I'm going to be looking for is account.does not exist. So we're looking to make sure that yes, this count does in fact exist. And in that case, I want to return the email. So we're validating the email by checking that it does exist. Or sorry, we're validating the email by checking that we're not changing the email to something that already exists, just like in our registration form. So up here, it's literally exactly the same. Remember, we get the email, we check to see if we can find that account. If we can't, then we allow them to register with that email. It's literally exactly the same. I'm actually going to copy this. It'll be the same with the username too. So I'm going to copy clean email and clean username from the account registration form and just paste those in because those are literally going to be exactly the same. Looks like the source code did not use string interpolation, so we can actually change that too. This will be email. That was, just in case you're wondering, this is how Python used to use like string interpolation, I guess, used to use this kind of substitution system. String interpolation is much cleaner in my opinion. You just add the F up here and then you can pass the variables. So ignore that if that looks different in the source code because it was different. Now the last function that we're going to build inside of our form for validating is we're going to override the save function. So I'm going to do save self commit equals to true. So by default, we want to commit these changes. Now I want to do account equals super account update form self dot save and then commit equals false. So I'm kind of like inserting this into, like I'm doing a database transaction, but I'm not committing the transaction. That's what you can think of with save commit equals false. So it's kind of like we're applying it, making sure we don't get any errors, but we're not committing it to the database. Now I want to do account.username equals self.cleaned data and look for the username field. Then account.email equals same thing, cleaned data, look for the email field. Then we want to do account profile image equals self.cleaned data, look for profile image. I bet you can guess what the next one's going to be. It's going to be hide email equals self cleaned data and look for hide email. And then if commit, then we want to do if commit account dot save and then return the account. All right, pressing Control S on that. Now let's go to views.py and we are going to build our edit view. So it's going to be very similar to the account view, of course, just with we're going to be editing so it can submit a form. It's going to look for a post request basically. So define edit account view request arguments arguments and then keyword arguments. First we want to say if not request.user.is authenticated. So if they're not authenticated, we want to redirect right away. There's no reason that you should ever be trying to edit anybody's account, even your own, because you're not even authenticated. We don't know what you're doing at this URL. Let's just redirect them. Next, let's get the user ID from the keyword argument. So get user ID. So same thing we did in the account view. Now I want to search that account based on that user ID. So account.objects.get primary key equals that user ID. Then I guess we should also probably surround this in a try catch. So why not? Let's surround it in a try except. So getting this, putting it in here, and let's look for an exception. Account.does not exist. So if for whatever reason the account with that primary key does not exist, what do we want to do? Well, we want to return an HTTP response because something is wrong basically. Something went wrong. Something went wrong. Now the next thing that we want to check is we want to check to make sure that this person is trying to edit their own profile. They're not trying to edit somebody else's profile. So I can say account.primary key does not equal request.user.primary key. So if the user is looking at someone's profile who is not theirs, I want to return an HTTP response and say you cannot edit someone else's profile. For some reason, I don't know why someone would try and do that, but you always got to handle all of those kind of weird scenarios. So once we've kind of done all those checks, now we're actually ready to implement the logic for this view. So if request dot post, so if the form is being submitted, then we want to create that form. So account update form, and we're going to need to import this. So let's go to the top of the page before we forget, add a comma and grab that account update form. And let's wrap the word wrap on this view just in case I kind of go too far. So account update form and pass request.post request.files. This is needed if we are including files for an image, which we will be in the next video. And then instance equals request.user. Because remember in our form, if you look here, the model is account. So that's the account, the type of data that we're submitting to the form. So now if the form is valid, we always want to check if it's valid, if they've applied the correct fields, meaning the email, the username, the hide email, Boolean, and also a profile image. If it's valid, then we just want to call form.save. And that's going to apply all the logic that we wrote right here. So form.save. And by default, save will be set to true. So right up here, notice that commit equals true. So that's the commit variable down here. So it's automatically going to save through there. So let's go back to views.py. Now I want to redirect. So return redirect back to the account screen. So account view, and then I want to pass any arguments that I need. I need the user ID, which I can get from account.primary key. So remember the redirect here, if we look in urls.py, the namespace is account, and then if we look at urls.py inside of account, the name is view. So that's why we have account view, and it takes an argument, this user ID right here. So we have to provide that argument. So we go user ID equals account.primary key. And there is our kind of form is valid case. So now what if it's not valid? So if it's not valid, I want to populate the fields with the values that are currently available. And I'll explain what I mean. So if you go to the profile, and I was just to refresh this edit screen, notice that my email is here and also my username is here. So all of these things are being applied to the form. They're kind of like initial values for the form. So we need to do that here. We need to set some initial values. So I want to say account update form, request.post, instance equals request.user. And now I need to set some initial values. So I'm going to do a comma and just kind of give myself some more space here and do initial equals a Django or a Python dictionary, and we're going to add a dictionary of values. So the first one here is ID, and then that's going to be account.primary key. Second is email, account.email. Third is username, account.username. Fourth is the profile image. So profile image, account.profile image. And then the last one is hide email. So hide_email, account.hide email. So these are the initial values that are going to get set to the form. You know, this case is actually, if they try to submit a request, the form is invalid, basically populate those initial values just as if the first time the view is loaded. So that's the other case that we actually need to work on. So if it's a post request, that's like if they try to submit a form. But if it isn't a post request, if it's actually a get request, so if they're like loading the page for the first time, that's what's going to be in this kind of else case here. And we want to do the exact same thing. So I want to create the form, set the initial values to what their initial kind of account values would be. And now I want to apply that form to the context. So I can do form, and I need to do this up above also, equals form. So copy this, and this should also go up here. Yeah, that should be okay. And then down below the whole if-else logic, we want to set one more variable, and that's going to be the max data size of an image. Data upload max memory size. So we want to set kind of limitations on the size of the image that they can upload. And I haven't created this constant yet, so don't panic if you don't know what this is. So I'm passing a variable that we have not created yet. I'm going to create that in just a second. So before I do that, I want to return the view. So request, I want to do the template. So that's going to be account/edit account.html, and then the context. So what is this constant? So let's go into settings.py, and we need to create that constant. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. It doesn't really matter where you define it. I'm going to put it down below this base URL, and set a value for this. So this is a limitation, a constant that I'm going to define that limits the size of the image that they're going to upload. So 10, actually here, I'll show you how this is calculated first before I just kind of write it in. So here's my calculator. So how many bytes are in a kilobyte? Well, 1024 bytes are in a single kilobyte, but I want megabytes. So how many kilobytes are in a megabyte? It's 1024. So I would multiply that by 1024. So that's 1 megabyte. So do I want, now it's like, what size do I want the image? Basically a good rule, I guess, is between probably 1 and 10. I'd say you wouldn't want an image being uploaded to your server bigger than 10 megabytes. That could occupy a lot of space. So I would just multiply that by 10. And that's how many bytes we would set this. So that's the value that I'm going to set here. 10, 485, 760. That's the value here, 1045, 760. So the math here is 10 times 1024, and then times 1024. So 1024 bytes. How many bytes are in a kilobyte? 1024. So you multiply it, and then that gives you 1 megabyte. That's 1 megabyte. Then you multiply by 10, so you get 10 megabytes. I can just do 10 megabytes. And that's going to be the limitation on the image size that we upload. So if we go to views, that is the constant that I'm defining here. And we're going to use that in our template to put a restriction on the image size that we upload. So pressing Control S on that, that's going to be our edit account view. Now let's set up the URL. So let's go into urls.py for the account. I'm going to copy this line and just append edit to this and then a trailing slash. I also need to import the view. So edit account view and add a comma and then add this here. And then this can be edit. And there we go. That's our new URL. Now, how am I going to visit this? Well, we need to go into account.html and search for the update button. So remember, if they click the update button, that's what we want to take us to that view. So we can use that URL shortcut that we just created, account, edit, and the only keyword argument here is going to be the user ID. So user_ID equals the ID. So you might be wondering where this ID is coming from. Well, if you go into settings or views.py and you look at the account view, notice this parameter right here is being passed to the template. So this ID, that's how I'm getting this ID value right here. Let's press Control S on that. Now let's go to the development environment and see if it worked. All right, so here we are in development. Let's go to my account. Let's scroll down, go to update. Cool, looks like that's good. Problem here though, it says this field is required. So those form errors should not be showing. Also these, we can actually ignore these for now since this isn't really set up yet. We're gonna fix this in the next video. Notice this edit button should actually be in the middle of the image. These should not be showing because we haven't edited. So just kind of ignore this and ignore this. That's gonna be fixed in the next video. The profile picture is showing, that's great. The email is being populated, the username is being populated. That's correct. This should not be showing, however. Well, first let's test if our form is working before we fix these. So I'm going to change the email. I'm going to change the email to mitch@tabian.com. Press save and let's see what happens. So boom, there we go. My email was changed. That's great. Now let's try the username. I'm going to change the username to Mitchell and change this back to mitch@tabian.ca. So let's also click hide email off. So if I press save, let's see mitch@tabian.ca. Yep, username is Mitchell. And let's go to update to see if the hide email was saved. Yes, it was. So let's change everything back to the way it was. Mitch, hide email, yes. Click save. So now we're kind of back to where we started. All of the form kind of stuff is working so far, so that's really great. We just need to figure out why these form errors are showing. These should not be showing. Okay, I found the problem. Looks like in the else case, so if request.post, so basically if it's a get request and we're loading it for the first time, we don't need to pass an instance here. So just having, actually not even request.post. We just need to set initial values because we're not detecting a post request. We just want initial values to be displayed in the view. That's all. So Control S on that. Now let's go back to our development environment and I'm going to refresh this and then boom, there we go. Those form errors are hidden. So again, this edit button shouldn't be here. These icons shouldn't be there, but that's for the image uploading and cropping stuff. So we're going to work on that next. So in the next video, I will work on, first of all, uploading an image. So we need to not only crop, so like in openchat.xyz, when I click this and I click on an image, that needs to get set. It needs to get set to this image view. That's what we're going to work on next. And then after that, we'll work on cropping. By the way, if you're watching this video on YouTube, what are you doing? You should be on codingwithmitch.com. If you look down below and you're on YouTube, there's nothing in the description. There's no source code links. There's no links for the code changes. I don't track your progress. You need to go to codingwithmitch.com to get all these free added benefits. And don't worry, the course is still free. It's 100% free no matter if you watch it on YouTube or codingwithmitch.com. You just get extra benefits if you watch it on codingwithmitch.com. So go there, make an account, watch the course, get all the benefits, and I'll see you in the next video.